Welcome to another stellar episode of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers. I am your host, Carl Franklin, in New London, Connecticut, and as always, my partner in crime in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Mark Dunn.
How you doing tonight, Carl?
I'm doing awesome.
That's good to hear, man. I'm excited about tonight's show. It's going to be different.
You don't say. You're excited. I'm excited if you're excited.
Man, I am always excited.
You are. That's true. And you have great reason to be excited today because this is the first in a series of shows that we're affectionately calling .NET Success Stories, where we interview people that have adopted .NET in their companies and had successful pilot projects or successful production projects. Coincidentally, some of them are going to be people we've trained, but you know that isn't necessarily a criteria for this series.
A shameless plug doesn't hurt once in a while.
That's true. That's true. We're really interested in giving the listener some real-world stories that they can use to promote .NET in their workplace over those other evil platforms, which shall remain nameless, by the way. So, Mark, have you noticed anything new in .NET land this week?
Man, I've been teaching a class this week. I've noticed I haven't slept much. What about yourself?
Well, I have slept a little bit, but not that much. Haven't been teaching much. So January's a pretty slow month. And by the way, you know, since January is so slow, Franklin's Net is offering a $500 discount on the VBNet Masterclass for January. Look it up at www.franklins.net. But enough of that now.
Man, what a great deal.
Certainly is. You know, January's dead, so if you like a small class, come on down. Anyway, one thing that I did see that struck my eye this week was the announcement of Microsoft.NET Alerts, Software Developers Kit. And what Alerts is a way that you can program messaging that utilizes the MSN Messenger. And so content providers can send messages to customers who choose to receive them. They're routed to Windows desktops, cell phones, PDAs, or any email address, all based on the customer's delivery preferences.
So is this like a radio station where you tune in to listen for a message?
That's exactly what it is. How incredibly alert of you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, not to pun there, but I did anyway, and there it is. So I thought it was pretty cool. I'm just about to download it and check it out. I just saw it today, and it looks very cool. I had been developing something similar along those lines, which I will be writing about and making public pretty soon, which is a multi-threaded socket server and client combination where the clients remain connected to the socket and therefore it's stateful. So sort of like an IRC server, a chat server where a client connects and they maintain a connection, unlike a web server where they just get what they need and then the connection is closed. They remain connected and then they can send messages through the server to everybody else that's connected or to, you know, one user or two users or whatever they want. And it's just a basic messaging platform that has a rich data class that holds, you know, what you might consider application packets. They're sort of like packets, but it's a class, the data holders, data 1, data 2. You know, everybody has a session ID, so you have from session ID to session ID, ways that you can implement your own protocols over this framework to send files or to send messages or alerts or any kind of thing. So it was really interesting because I had just finished this product when I saw this Alerts Software Developers Kit out there. It's amazing how these things work in serendipity. Synchronicity.
Well, is there any cost associated with this, or is this just free to any developer that wants to download it?
It is free, my friend, as most SDKs are from Microsoft.
That's almost as good a deal as $500 off our class in January.
Almost, but not quite. Not quite as good a deal. But if you go to msdn.microsoft.com/net/framework, there you'll see a whole bunch of stuff about the .NET framework. And on the second list, well, how should I describe it? It's always difficult to describe content on a web page. There's basically two lists. One is called Highlights, and the other below that is called Working with the .NET Framework. and it's one of the links under that.
Well, I bet we could put a link on the show.
Yeah, we absolutely should do that. Editor, scratch all that stuff about the website, and we'll just say this. And we'll make the link available on the website for .NET Rocks on this show, so you can go take a look at it. So, Mark, anything else besides your lack of sleep you want to talk about before we introduce our guest?
Well, I'll tell you why I've had a lack of sleep. I came up with an idea. I thought I would take some of my most advanced students through a graphics exercise. So we've started to write a Tetris game. You know Tetris, where you drop the blocks?
Yeah.
So that's going along pretty well. I figure we're going to do it over 6 weeks, and I cracked it up into 6 lessons.
Huh.
And the last one, they'll have a finished working Tetris game.
Wow.
At the end of the rainbow.
Awesome. And that's a community project, is it?
Yeah, I've got right now about 32 developers involved in it.
Wow, that's smoking. Well, that's great. Let's we'll keep the public informed about that, and we'll put a link to our page on the website.
Yeah, we'll post the source up there when we finish with it.
Most awesome. So like we said before, this is the first in a series of .NET success stories, and our first guest, we actually have 2 guests tonight, but our first guest is Mr. Troy Girton, who's an independent contractor from Manchester, New Hampshire. He's been working with .NET for about 18 months, and the reason that we have him on is because he was a contractor on a project for a very secretive company whose identity we must not disclose under penalty of death. It's we can say that it's an industrial roofing products company, can't we, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, we can say that. And we can say that they're into roofing manufacturing and services, and they're located somewhere in Ohio, but only 2 people and the Pentagon know the whereabouts of this roofing company.
It's deep underground.
Troy, you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Carl.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. That was a fantastic intro.
All right.
I like that.
Good. Well, the company told us they didn't want their identity disclosed, so we won't disclose it.
Well, everything's competition these days, competitive advantage.
It's true. So tell everybody how you discovered .NET. Let's put it that way.
I actually discovered .NET attending a little ditty that you put on with, I believe it was Paul Litwin. Was
Right.
that correct?
Yeah.
It was the Developers Training Tour, which I think was in the fall of 2001. Does that sound about right?
Yep, that's
Got
right.
the years right?
It was October.
And it was being held in Boston, and I basically primarily went to find out what it was. I mean, I started reading up on, the online marketing fluff and stuff, and a few white papers here and there, articles and stuff and such. But you can only get so much out of that. So I figured I'd try the 2-day training tour. Well, it was an incredible eye opener. And
was this just you doing it for yourself, or?
I was actually gainfully employed by that secret company.
Oh, yeah. Right.
One of those secret companies.
Okay.
And so I went as just part of normal type of training that you would do working for a secret company.
Right.
Have to stay abreast of all the new technologies.
Of course, yeah.
And I've been sold out since.
What were you working in before you went to the tour?
TextPad. I mean, ASP. Classic ASP.
Visual Notepad.
Visual Notepad, Visual TextPad. Yeah, it had all the little plugins for ASP and everything. So I got the color coding and everything.
Did the secret company send you to the training, or is this something you did on your own?
It's something that I wanted to do. So I went on there nickel, but I traveled down to Boston each day for the 2 days, and
so you saw Paul and I slam pies in each other's face for a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there was so much that I got out of it those 2 days. I actually paid attention.
Wow.
Believe it or not, I did notice there were plenty of developers and such sleeping around me, but I don't think that had anything to do with your presentation by far. And I believe at some point during during those 2 days, I got your ear aside and we talked and about training and stuff that you were doing, and it's all history from there.
So I came to Ohio to the said compound, got through
That's right.
got through the security gates, and we did an on-site.
It actually is gated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and that's all I'm going to say.
But you don't know how to get there because you had a hood over your head and were
yes, we had him
van.
blindfolded. We picked him up at the Hopkins Airport. We blindfolded him and then drove him out there. And actually, we took like a very long, windy route, so he wouldn't be able to try and count the amount of time.
You may have just given it away.
Yeah.
The long route from Hopkins Airport. But anyway, so we took the VBNet masterclass and we did it on site there.
Yes.
And I remember you guys wanted you wanted me to pay special attention to a few particular technologies. So tell everybody what happened then.
Geez, what were the particular technologies?
All right, well, we'll skip all that. So it was a good class.
I think the particular technologies were everything. Just the what is it, how do you do it.
I remember in particular you were going back and forth between should we use web services, should we use remoting.
That was probably the biggest thing. I mean, all that really any of us knew at the time were the web services. So the whole idea of using remoting was a big question, and I pretty much ran with that. I remember we had a pretty extensive conversation. Jumping ahead, fast forwarding here, but remember that little coffee shop meeting that we had after one of the classes? I don't know if it was a Wednesday.
I remember it. Yeah, it was
Thursday.
It was like one of the last days, and we had some time left over after the project, so we decided to take it to the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were. I remember us talking about it and bringing up remoting, and I was trying to get as much info as I could out of you and about it. And I do remember you saying actually that we should just stick with web services because they're easy.
Because it's easier, right?
Because it's easier. Well, after having gone through it and gone through the exercise of coming up to speed and learning enough about remoting to make a intelligent decision about which route made sense for us, we actually ended up going with remoting, and it's just worked out phenomenally well for us.
So tell us about the application, as much as you can without getting shot.
Tell you, as far as how far do you want me to dig into it? Like what?
Well, let's start with the big picture, I guess.
History. Well, the big picture is that the application really stemmed out of a need to do a complete rewrite of an existing, I hate to use this word, but legacy application. Legacy. It's basically the application that this one division of said secret company had basically been running their services business on for, I think it had been around probably for 10 years.
Wow.
And it was a FoxPro app, your basic FoxPro desktop app that was thrown on a network here and there. And
what was it concerned with, sales and products, or? Oh,
I can speak about that. That's right. Actually tracking basic roofing information and services and anything that you can possibly think of about a roof, about an industrial roof.
Okay.
Not your dad's roof, but,
right.
And all that goes into that.
Okay.
Which, like anything, when you get into it, it's amazing how much information there is about industrial roofing.
So it was a client-server application, right?
Client-server app. Gone through a couple of iterations of FoxPro, I believe, and had grown to a point where it was, probably in its fourth revision or something like that, major version, and pretty stable and been around for a while. But this one division within the company is just growing by leaps and bounds, and the business owners knew that they couldn't exist with the growth potential and what they were projecting for growth, they couldn't exist with this application because it needed to be rolled out to everyone. All the information that was put in, by a rep or by a customer, they'd have to email the Fox Pro data back, and then they'd have to suck it all in manually, and it's just an incredibly huge manual process. I mean, you can imagine.
Yep.
And so the business owners recognized this and started exploring what it would mean, what it would take to basically make an enterprise-enabled, if you will, application to do what they do.
So, Troy, were you using VB6, Visual Basic 6, to do any business components? You said it was a client-server type app.
I actually had no part in the old application. I came in kind of as a fresh face to this whole process of building the new application. So,
was it web-enabled?
Not at all. It was CD-enabled.
Okay.
Burn it on a CD, ship it out. So, and there's a lot of other aspects to the current business process. What we did is not just retooled the application, but it was a retooling of the business process. I mean, imagine that, right?
Right.
The business owners took this opportunity to retool, redesign their process, and of course, in the electronic age, one of the big things that they were trying to get away from was burning paper and sending paper out, and that has been how they've delivered their product, right? That comes out of this application. They burn off these beautiful looking hard copy reports, some of them 800 to 1,000 pages in length, right?
Wow.
Bundle them up and ship them out. And they wanted to get out of that business for obvious reasons.
How many client sites did you have?
That'd be a tough one for me to answer. I'm not sure. Probably hundreds. It's tough to say because there's every different kind of flavor of how they utilize that existing application.
Okay.
Their primary use of it is in-house, though.
So I remember that one of the things you wanted to do was consolidate all this data in one place,
yeah,
or
exactly.
in two places,
exactly,
or a couple places, because it was just
single place.
Okay.
Yep.
I remember we talked about some SQL replication at one point. That's why I brought it.
Oh, you know what I think that was for? I think we were talking about using a data replication product for allowing customers to actually subscribe to published data from SQL Server. It wasn't actually using replication for our own purposes.
To get around this. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell me, how long did it take to write the new app? How did you do it, and what does it involve?
Well, let me give you a little bit more background on how we got there. We probably spent after we got out of the training class, we've probably spent the next additional 3 months continuing on with our prototyping and just letting the analysis and design run its course. And that was actually a good thing.
Right.
We spent a lot of time on design, and it's our development has really shown from there. It's kind of just falling out like it's supposed to.
That's great. What did you use for your continuing education? Did you pick up any good books, or did you go to...
Actually, the VB.net Masterclass was all we needed.
Get out of here.
I haven't touched a reference manual since.
Are you serious?
No, I'm not.
You asshole.
Come on, man. I'm trying to help you out here. In all seriousness, the Masterclass was a great springboard. It was a perfect shot in the arm to get everybody up to speed, get them energized about the product as much as you can in a week's time.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But as far as additional training or anything, we haven't. It's been all learn as you go.
This is Carl asking you to do me a favor. Now, you know, the only reason that we can afford to bring you .NET Rocks every week for free and all this great content is because that we support ourselves, Franklin's Net does, by teaching training classes hands-on. So even though you may not be interested in taking my class or a class that we teach at Franklin's Net, you probably know somebody or even a list of people in your company that might be interested, or that might be interested in .NET or .NET Rocks. So this is a personal request from me to you to please send those people our URL. Send them to Franklin's Net. Tell them to look at our offerings. Tell them to check out .NET Rocks. Spread the word. This is how we can support ourselves and bring you this content every week. My VBNet Masterclass is not for beginners. It's for VB6 intermediate to expert developers. It's intense, and it's realistic as well. And I've taught this class to lots of different companies, over 300 companies last year, including ForSure.com, Antion, Avanade, Bangor Savings Bank, Baseline Technologies, Burnt Sand, Kadic, Citigroup, Eastern Connecticut State University, Fidelity Investments, Fleet Financial, Foxwoods, Hamilton Sunstrand, Hubble, Instron, Intuit, the Kennedy Center, and hey, that's just the K's. The list goes on and on. So do me a favor and spread the love, will you? I'd sure appreciate it. Now let's get back to our show where we're talking with Troy Gurton about his great application. We'll get into a little bit more of the details of this application right here on .NET Rocks. Thanks a lot, and don't go away. Any good books that you picked up, or that
just
reading?
I'm getting all
or?
all the basic magazines, .NET,
right.
and still, of course, the SQL Server, Visual Studio,
yeah.
All the different .NET magazines, and basically just following the different articles in there.
That's cool.
Yeah, but no additional training. Not really any books. I read a couple of books before the class, but it's mostly just been code as you go.
Cool.
And here's the problem. Go dig into the framework and figure it out.
Yeah, it's all there, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually doesn't figure out the problem. Figure out where it is in the framework.
Right.
Troy, I'm interested in the analysis and design work that you did. So did you use any kind of UML or any...
We actually, we spent probably about 3 weeks doing our best to come up with some UML diagrams. We were all novices at doing that, so we kind of bowled our way through that process and took it to what we thought was a good logical stopping point. We just basically used it to try and identify, any type of reusable objects. What it really helped us do was organize the application.
Yeah.
Right.
Ultimately, the UML, our namespaces, that's one of the things that, if we start talking about the detail of what we did with what we've done with the application, we really took advantage of namespaces. And basically, if you look at our UML diagrams that we came up with and you look at the namespaces that we use for the project, they're pretty much identical. So that's probably one of the biggest things we got out of it, and some of the reusable components that we identified.
Right. I've always thought proper use of namespaces would make it easier to maintain. In the future, if you bring a new programmer in, everything's grouped, categorized, descriptive names.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was one of the things that, thinking about namespaces, any short, small project, you're probably, that you're doing, unless you're really into it, I'm thinking you're probably not even going to bother with namespaces, right?
Yeah, most of the time for a small project, yeah.
And if it's a project that you think is small and turns out to be big, well, guess what? You're probably not going to utilize namespaces because you never had the time to design it, right?
Right.
So I think we were pretty fortunate in that we had the opportunity to do the proper design work, and therefore our namespace utilization is a reflection of that.
Great.
And just for our listeners, if you use namespaces properly, then if you've got a library with, say, 200 functions in it, you're not going to hit IntelliSense and get this enormous list.
Right.
You can break those functions down into logical categories.
Yep. Yeah, it's beautiful, and we use VSS, of course, for source management control, and that just integrates beautifully with the way that the namespaces get recognized and the way that the projects get set up and everything within VS, Visual Studio.
Mm-hmm.
So our Visual Studio, our Visual Source Safe projects, of course, mirror our namespaces as well. So everything looks like it should be.
Excellent. So tell me about the architecture of your application.
Well, let's start from the back, I guess. That's
Okay.
probably always the easiest way. Backend's your basic vanilla SQL Server 2000 box.
Okay.
Separate complete server, of course, by itself. Our end production environment will actually be a web farm with load balancers in front of that.
Cool.
We will have a separate report server.
Okay.
Which is actually your idea. That came out of the coffee shop.
Yep.
So we'll have a separate report server as well, because even though we're getting away from the paper, we're still generating reports. It's just that we're pushing the printing off to whomever wants to generate it, right?
Yeah, and that's
Are you using any tools like Crystal Reports or Active Reports?
Yes, the latter.
Active Reports.
Yep.
Data Dynamics is an awesome product.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the matter? You couldn't hack the license fee for Crystal Reports? Or,
Yeah, exactly. We looked into that. It was like $1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was phenomenal.
People are flocking to Active Reports.
Yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal. One of the other developers had he's already knocked all the reports out. Now we have to tie it into the application, but he's already knocked it all out, and it's worked out wonderfully for him. So, that's pretty much our production environment. We have a great need for a lot of disk capacity, so we'll have. We're still debating what that's going to be, but we have upwards of we're figuring when this thing gets fully blown out there, anywhere from 30 to 50 gig, at any given point, just in file system capacity.
So your web servers then are remoting the objects, your business objects?
Yes.
Okay.
As far as the architecture of the application, we decided after going around and around and around and debating it to death, to actually create two separate UIs, a very rich Windows UI and actually a very rich web UI or browser UI.
I've been telling people the same thing, and people really think they have to decide.
In the end, we said, you know what, our architecture is such that we're going to have business components that are going to be residing, and that's where the remoting fits in really nice as well.
Right.
Our business components are going to sit up. They're going to be hosted in IIS, and they're right there for our web app to use, and they're right there for our desktop or our remote Windows application to use.
It's a beautiful thing.
And it is just the most beautiful thing. I'm right in the middle or towards the end of doing the web development right now, and I'm just, it's just going like clockwork, 1, 2, 3, because all that business logic, all that validation, all that everything is just right there.
Yeah.
I'm just adding references to my project and putting import statements in, and bang, there I go.
Yeah.
Need to get a list, need to do an update, need to do whatever. It's just phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
And how many concurrent users do you have, or do you expect to have, or do you have any sort of performance calculations yet?
The application is such that we're never going to be a NASDAQ or anything like that.
Right.
Performance, are we going to have thousands of users?
So you got a few hundred clients, and you don't foresee
we don't
any
ever
problem with that.
expect more than, say, 100 concurrent users at a time, and that's probably a stretch.
One of the great things about remoting like that is that you don't have to worry about using up your connections.
Exactly.
You don't have a connection from every client to the SQL server. Those objects get pooled and
it's all that same good stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the remoting that we do is all what is it called? Single call.
Yeah.
We don't need to keep it open or anything. We got .NET on both ends. We're using the binary formatter, so it's phenomenal how what the access time is too.
Actually, not a whole lot of modification to your original objects to get them remoting.
Actually, none. Yeah, everything's all config driven, which again is another beautiful thing. So if you want to work locally, right? So if I'm traveling, I've got everything set up on my laptop. It's a simple configuration entry. I comment out one line of code, and I don't load my remoting configuration file, and there I am. I'm working local.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal thing.
Oh, that's great. So when do you plan to go live?
We're actually in a limited production beta phase right now for our Windows application.
Okay.
We're going to be moving into that same phase for the web application towards the end of this month, beginning of next month, and it's just going to be a phased rollout from there.
Yeah.
We'll get to a GA release, but even that GA release will be a very slow, open the tap, very slow type of thing. We're not going to just open the floodgates with the application. The application is such that you'd swamp the production personnel in-house by doing that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Troy. Did you use any third-party tools, either in the Windows forums or on the web forums?
Actually, very few. We did get the Component 1 product line, and out of that, I think we've used the spell checker, and we're probably going to use the grid. We haven't yet. Everything else has been in the framework.
Did you write any of your own controls, or derive new controls?
Absolutely. As far as user controls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Geez, almost everything's a user control.
Or you did that to take advantage of page caching or fragment caching.
We did that to take advantage of what we needed to do with the application. I mean, we weren't trying to be tricky for performance or anything like that.
Right.
We were just trying to solve, basic programming problems and such.
So the training tour was in October. My class on-site was in January.
We didn't actually start coding.
You didn't start coding for 3 months.
Yeah, so we
January
really
now.
didn't start coding hard until, I'm thinking, God, it almost sounds like May. I'm thinking May or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, because I think we didn't have the green light yet. We still, even though we had all the design ready going and everything, we still didn't have the okay.
So we're talking 8 months of coding?
If that, yeah.
Okay. And how many developers?
Just 3 of us.
Well, there you go. That is an incredible success story.
Certainly is.
It's just a phenomenal amount of code, too. I mean, I think at last count, there's probably about 350 stored procs, and I don't even know what the table count is. I couldn't even tell you how many user controls or Windows forms or web forms or whatever. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff there. It's big. The build takes a couple of minutes.
So what's in store for the future of this application? What's next?
It's going to have a fairly long life. I would guess at least 5 years. That's based on how long I think .NET's going to survive.
You think .NET's only going to be around for 5 years?
It's not so much .NET. It's kind of the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, is .NET going to keep the industry's attention?
Oh hell yeah! With shows like this, how can it not?
That's true. That's true. Well, it's got mine. I mean, I haven't been disappointed. Well, I have been disappointed.
Okay, let's hear it.
In one particular control. Well, it's one of those things when we got into .NET and we were designing the application, the things that you thought were going to be difficult, like retrieving files, and how do you do that over remoting, an actual file. In a couple hours, I had the skeleton of how it was going to work. I was like, wow, is that it? So the things that I thought were going to be really difficult have not been. We've been able to meet and exceed everything that we've designed and said we could do. And the things that have been stumbling blocks have been basically dealing with a few Windows controls.
Windows Forms controls?
Yeah.
Such as like the binding mechanism, let me take a flying stab?
There you go.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we're dealing with, probably even still at this point, that has been the most troublesome has been the data grid. Now, that's for the Windows form. The web form, or the web forms data grid is beautiful.
Let me just make a plug for a company that's not a sponsor, but I got a chance to check out the Janus grid. Beautiful. Beautiful. Rock solid, too. It came highly recommended from one of the RDs.
What do you think about Component 1s?
I haven't used it, so I don't know.
No input on it from anybody?
However, there was a discussion on the RD list recently about who likes what grid, And some guy came off with a paper that said they tried Component 1, they tried Infragistics, they tried all these other ones, and the Janus Grid was their favorite.
Okay. And I think part of the big problem that we've had has been trying to use binding, the data grid, and also mixing remoting in there. You definitely get some different behaviors. Trying to remote, there's just some things that you can't do.
I can tell you some things I don't like about the grid. I don't like the fact that when you're bound to a multiple tier data set and you're navigating, from one table to another, and then you also are bound to, say, a list box or something like that, and you click the top level, sometimes your grid, you won't be able to get back to the top level. Things like that. Little things like, I'll tell you what else drives me nuts, the list box control. When the list box is bound to, say, a data set, and you're displaying a field in the list box, and then you have detail fields in that same data set, in the same table, bound to text box controls that you want to be able to show the details and edit and all that. If you make a change on a text box and then hit update, nothing's going to happen. The data set that you're bound to doesn't recognize that a change has taken place until you actually move the list box.
Exactly. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Until you move the list box to another record and then back to the original record.
Exactly. Exactly. We actually have that behavior in some places in our application right now, and we're putting them out as enhancements for a later date to keep online.
Well, I went
around.
It's
one of those things. Well, that's just the way it works, and you're
that's
going,
right.
Gee,
yeah.
but that's not right. So that's a very good.
That's the answer that I got too. That if you read the binding documentation, it'll make sense. Well, God damn it, I don't want it to make sense. I want it to freaking work.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, that's unacceptable behavior. You can't expect a user to know that they have to move off of a field before they click the save button.
Yeah,
for that data to save. I mean, how can that be expected? So, that's a really good example. The other thing, basically, too, is that it is its namesake, data grid. There is no such thing, unless we've all completely missed it at our secret company X, of just building the grid on the fly, handling it yourself. You have to bind a data source.
Yeah.
To a data grid. I haven't done a lot of grid work in the past, but talking to some of the other guys that I've worked with and the guys on the team here that have used some other grids and stuff extensively, that's kind of the event model's a little bit different too.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an issue. You just sort of have to get used to using data sets for everything. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, I steered clear of it quite a while ago after my first exposure to it. I mean, I was beating my head. I spent probably a week on something that I had projected for about a day or 2 days time on. Luckily I had 5 days on the say remoting, and it only took me a day. Something like that, so I could
right.
make up some time there.
Well, definitely check out the Janus controls, and I would just say this about third-party controls for anyone that's listening. By default, you're not going to get the flaky kind of problems with memory leaks and other weird things and DLL hell that have plagued controls of the past that have been a serious problem because they're all written to the framework, right? So they're all managed code. The kind of problems that you'll have are just quirky programming problems.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get a dialog box because it's crashed with some crazy message about a offset address or something like, as long as the programmer has any sense of debugging at all, they're going to catch those errors before it goes out the door. So anyway, I would just encourage people to check out the third-party controls without fear. Right. Because this is .NET we're talking about after all. It's not the old stuff. Well, anything else you want to say, Troy, before we say goodbye?
No, it's been great talking to you guys. I'm honored to be asked to be a guest on your program.
Well, it's been awesome hearing this story. I think people get a lot of use out of it.
Yeah, man, it's always great to hear real-world stories where guys are out with their hands on this stuff, solving a problem.
Absolutely.
Yep. Before we got onto the idea of .NET, and I'd like to say it was my idea, but even after I went to the developers tour, it still was, somebody else had brought up the idea. Well, what about .NET?
Yeah.
For this project, and I thought, well, just because it was beta, it was hands off, but we ran with it. That was the other interesting point, is that I guess from a business perspective, from just any ABC business, I guess you could call us early adopters of the technology, because we ran with it and had it actually approved while it was still in beta.
Yeah.
Now, not the framework, but certainly Visual Studio.
Wow.
Was still in beta, so that was a huge leap too. That was a huge
Absolutely.
leap. But it's delivered in with a few little quirks here and there. The whole environment has delivered and been everything that we could have asked for. So
in less than a year.
In less than a year.
And you had some fun too, didn't you?
Yeah, it has been fun. I actually feel like a coder again.
I totally agree, man. It's fun.
I mean, I can definitely honestly say that I did my dues in TextPad.
Well, Troy, thanks very much.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
All righty.
Good night, Troy.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, so I'm taking a look at the February 2003 issue of MSDN Magazine at msdn.microsoft.com. I don't know if you knew this, but the articles and columns are all up there every month for you to check out. This month, a few things caught my eye. First of all, the main feature story is all about class templates, which is creating templates that will generate code, common code that you use all the time, with based on different pieces of data, based on different variables that you put in. The author, Adam J. Steinert, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, says that it is a little bit of a learning curve to get a hold of the object model, but once you do, your productivity is going to go through the roof, especially if you find yourselves writing the same components over and over and over again with the same code. Let's see. Dino Esposito in Cutting Edge talks about client-side ASP.NET hosting with Cassini, which is a sort of scaled-down ASP.NET server that runs on a client. So, for example, if you're going to ship an application on a CD that contains a lot of data, and you don't want to run into any DLL issues with a custom application, you want to do it as a web application, you can run this little utility, and it installs a sort of an ASP.NET environment for you on the client. That's very cool. I also like Ted Pattison's article, Basic Instincts on Implementing Callbacks with Multicast Delegate. Here's something that I'm getting a lot out of right here. Jeff Richter's .NET column, Safe Thread Synchronization, where he talks about synchronizing threads and some of the pitfalls of using monitors and doing it the Microsoft way and using the lock statement, the sync lock statement, static members versus non-static members, and versus instance members. And that's something that I'm very interested in. So check it out, msdn.microsoft.com/msdnmag. You'll be glad you did. Hey, coming up on .NET Rocks, Adrian Bordeaux and Arthur Gelli from the New London Day newspaper talk about their new ASP.NET version and what was involved in that, right here on .NET Rocks. Don't go away. All right, we're back with Adrian Bordeaux and Arthur Gelli from the New London Day. And they're our second success story because they're a local paper here in New London, Connecticut. Arthur is actually in the studio with me, and Adrian is on his cell phone in Rhode Island right now. And they're a pretty unique success story because they're probably one of the last independent newspapers around here. Is that right, Adrian?
That's correct.
So in New England or in United States, what's the story there with the Day?
Well, I mean, there's only a few independent newspapers that I'm aware of in the country. Most of them are being, bought up or bought out by larger corporations, like Gannett.
Right.
But we actually run on a trust fund. And so, everything's privately funded, everything's privately owned, and so that kind of gives us a unique spin on how we do business, and specifically in this area.
Yeah. Been around for a long time too. The paper has.
Oh yeah, over 100 years, easily. So
150, I believe.
So I wanted to ask you guys, when did you first? Now, obviously, what we're talking about here is a website for the newspaper, theday.com. And this site, what the first time you went live, did you go pure HTML or was it ASP or what was it?
It was pure HTML. What we did was we basically put up one page that says, well, this is theday.com, and we're going to be developing the site. We just want to let you know that we're out here.
Okay.
So it really just started out as a one-page static website.
And you had like one story or something every day.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, it wasn't even that complicated. It was just a notice. It set up for a couple of months or something, and it just we're here and we're going to do this. And at some point, we'll start putting some news here.
What year was that you started?
98.
And how long did that HTML version last?
I'd say about 4 months. It took me that long to figure out what direction, we wanted to go in. I was always used to Windows platforms, and there was no way I was going to drop what I had learned and, pick up Unix or Linux or Apple or any of that other stuff. So
Right.
being on the Windows platform, ASP seemed to have been the right direction to go in.
You had some experience at Foxwoods, did you not?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just talking with Pete Clare last night, who informed me that he used to work with you.
Yeah, I used to be in the IT department at Foxwoods, not managing, but supervising a group of technicians, and we basically took care of all the buildings outside of the physical building, Foxwoods, which was all the properties, Randall's Ordinary.
Okay.
So it was just a lot of stuff.
So Arthur, when did you come into the development group at the day?
1999, end of 1999.
And that was when the ASP site was in full swing?
Now we were just starting. Adrian wrote the site, but it wasn't live at the time.
Oh, okay. So Adrian, you were working on the ASP site in 1999 when Arthur came along, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like, developing? I mean, you guys pretty much took nothing and made a completely interactive newspaper. Well, tell me about that.
Well, Adrian wrote a front-end and back-end database and ASP pages. I didn't have any programming experience in that time. Well, and they told me, you want to be Visual Basic programmer? I said, okay. And I started writing basic small scripts to process some text files. And we had several technicians, we still have them, and to transfer Word documents to the web pages. And it was a nightmare. It took several people up to 8 hours or more to convert these documents to HTML.
Oh, these documents, Adrian, were what the paper was using internally to publish the news? Is that?
No, what would happen is they'd write a story, and it was our job to convert it from a Word document to be displayed on the website.
Good Lord. Ouch.
So we had to figure out how to get the information from where it was, just sitting someplace out on the network. We had to figure out to get it from that place, get it translated, get it to the web so that people can look at it online.
Was there any hope in getting them to use another program, for example?
No, that's the short answer.
In addition, pictures too.
And also photos, and also photo captions, and author names, and
So that's a big chore. I mean, that's a big task. How did you handle that?
I can't say it was handled very gracefully. Um, uh, there was a huge learning curve. This is something that we did as we were learning.
Right.
We were also learning SQL. We were also learning, the ins and out of, basic HTML.
Wow.
And also Java. So everything was OJT while in full production.
Huh. What were some of the problems that you ran into with ASP?
Well, you have an idea in your head what you want to do. Now, because you have no real formal training on this language, you don't know how to translate what you have in your head to the website simply because you don't know what tools you have available to you. I think that was the biggest stumbling block, just trying to figure out what set of tools that you had available to you and what could those tools do.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is interesting because I know how long it was. It was just like last week you guys flipped the switch on the ASP.NET site. Isn't that right?
Right.
So from 1999 until, 2003, you guys have been humming along in ASP. What's your traffic like? What kind of machines do you have to handle the load? And
Well, we have an average around 5 to 9,000 unique visitors a day and 20,000 hits. It depends how you want to count this. It's like returning visitors, but about 5 to 10 depends on the day, unique visitors.
And do you use DNA architecture, Com Plus? What do you use to you use object pooling and all that stuff? What kind of things do you do?
In some areas we do use object pooling, we use Complas, but for the most part it's ASP, pure ASP pages.
So you're using Com Plus with ASP. You have a learning curve problem, but the site is held up. I mean, it's one of the best sites that I've ever seen in terms of newspapers. You put everything that's in the paper and more online for free. So tell me about your exposure to .NET, Arthur.
Well, I took your class. It was starting point. Before I was open.net, close.net, open.net, close.net. Why do I need to learn it? I took this class that gave a good starting point, basically. So I could see what I can do with it. And from, like previous speaker told, it's a good springboard. We start and I came back, talk to Adrian, and we basically decided to do it in .NET.
Adrian, what had your exposure to .NET been before that?
I'd read about it. I'd heard about it. I knew it was the next thing.
Right.
But up to that point, I looked at it as another, okay, now we got to move to the next step.
Right.
How do we learn about it? How do we decide on what to implement? And how do we put this thing online all within a reasonable amount of time without affecting both the newspaper, daily production, and our online readers?
Yeah. So how long did it take before between when you guys took the class and you went live?
We took class in May. We start write code about when I start write code, midsummer. After that, consultant left.
Yes.
Yeah, after real programmer left, and basically I was doing newspaper conversion to our SQL database, moving documents and taking care of pictures, ads. Adrian was writing a website.
So basically, it's the same kind of success story. It was 6 to 8 months, and you guys were live.
Right.
Were you using C++, VB to write components before?
VB before. Pure VB. When I was starting with .NET, we're still using VB. I'm right now start learning a little bit for myself C#.
Were you able to take advantage of code inheritance and any of the design that you did?
Yes, definitely. I design UI for our web technicians to edit documents in SQL database, basically articles. I use inheritance tree view Yeah, I override review. I wrote my own object. I use I wrote my own user controls for different purposes as well.
Well, that's great. And the transition wasn't that bad from VB then to picking up the object-oriented concepts?
Well, before I took Carl's class, in the same time I was taking two classes in programming, object-oriented programming, Java and C++, and so it's helped me a lot to move into .NET as well, because if you can, if you know VB, you can basically write stuff in .NET, but you will not be able to take full advantage of possibilities. Learning curve will take a lot, I don't know, longer. Yes. So I was right now I'm using in my programs inheritance. It's purely object-oriented programs, inheritance, subclassing.
That's great. I'm glad. I'm sure that's very encouraging for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, it's an amazing site. Did you guys rebuild components, or are you doing code behind? Or how are you doing that? Are you using inline code or code behind?
Well, Adrian uses code behind, and we do use some inline code. Right now, we use some old C++, some old Complas component for ads management, but it's going to be gone, hopefully, within the next couple of weeks.
Adrian or Arthur, either of you guys, do you plan on exposing any web services for news, for example?
Well, we have to stabilize our site first. Just going live Sunday, I've spent probably, 15 hours a day for the last week, just tweaking the site, primarily based on feedback from our users, readers. I like this, I don't like this, this is great, this blows or whatever.
It's a technical term.
Yeah. So a lot of time is being spent tweaking the site, and when you have a lot of people, when you have 1,000 people looking at your site, and they're telling you things that you could never see on your own, you tend to spend time trying to satisfy them. So we're going to take some time and just iron out all the bugs first, and we'll move on to services. The only service that we would probably that we might be looking at is, of course, like reselling the content. Arthur and I have talked about that extensively, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime like this year.
I can imagine, like Mystic and More having, the current weather conditions or something from theday.com online or anything like that. Right. Yeah. Very cool. How's the performance been in terms of, relative to the old site?
Well, we're still measuring that. We've had a couple hiccups simply because we have an awful lot of traffic coming to the site first thing in the morning. So, we're trying to streamline that process. But I think once we work out all the bugs, I think the performance is going to be a lot better than the old site.
Are you guys caching your pages?
Actually, what we're doing is it's kind of interesting. We're caching not necessarily the pages, but we're caching our database calls like weeks at a time. So basically, if you can imagine, we'll call 2 weeks worth of information from our database. That's all the articles, the headlines, the photos, everything.
Right.
Dump it in the memory, and essentially, when people read pages on the website, they're actually reading things from memory, so it's a lot faster than calling to the SQL database.
Using the cache object for that?
Right.
Did you wind up using user controls and setting output caching for those?
User controls, yes. Output caching, no.
Another thing is, did you use everything in flow layout, or did you use grid layout for anything?
I didn't have time to learn that much about Visual Studio.net. It was just easier for me to just code by hand.
Right, and I think a lot of classic ASP programmers take that approach.
What do you see as the future of this page? You're just going to are you going to continue to develop to add features as you learn more about .NET?
I think I have a good working knowledge of .NET now to move forward for the next year. Right now, it's going to be all about adding features.
Yeah.
I've got a very aggressive schedule for adding features for the rest of the year. It's going to include basically the reason that we moved from the old platform to the new, not necessarily from ASP to .NET. It just made sense to go to .NET because it's the newest technology, and it makes so many things so easy, and also increases performance. But
Yeah.
the reason for the upgrade really was so that we can change the data.com from a news delivery system or the digital version of the print product to an interactive platform that will allow our readers to do more than what they do to, allow our readers to do something other than just read the news.
Yeah.
Allowing people to start and stop their subscriptions, create coupons online, create their own ads, check and see how many people have viewed their ads.
I noticed that you have like what is it called? The day
exchange.
The day exchange, yeah. Where you set up an account and you can log in and manage your, it's a personalization of the site.
Right.
Did you do all that by yourself, or is that a product that you snuggled up with?
We did it all by ourselves, but you go out and you see different features that other sites are offering, and you figure out how to incorporate it into your own.
It's very cool.
Everything that's done on the day.com, from the back end to the middleware to what you see on the website itself, is all done internally.
That's great.
And I don't really foresee using any external components. Between Arthur and myself, we can do some pretty good stuff. So I think so.
Well, yeah. How about XML? Do you guys utilize XML at all?
Do we? I don't think so.
Well,
I think we tried to one time.
a little bit, but I thought eventually it's not worth to learn. Well, I'm not. It's worth to learn, but what's the point at this point to learn XML? We put XML everything in data sets and work from there.
I see. So you really don't have any need to integrate with anything that's in an XML format already.
No.
Maybe in the future when they decide to upgrade their Office document, Microsoft Office to next version, so they'll start using XML maybe. I don't see it in the next couple of years probably coming.
Yeah, and even then you can just import that XML into a data set, and you don't really need to know much about it.
Right.
Well, you guys it's truly amazing to see, the sort of seat of your pants in the real world where, you don't have the luxury of, taking a lot of time in having a lot of resources. You've done very well just with a couple of guys. How many guys are there besides you two?
You mean programming and building the site?
Yeah.
That's it, just us.
A team of two.
That's awesome. So here we go. The first success story, about 3 developers, didn't he say? 3 developers, 8 months, done. And the second one, 2 developers, 6 to 8 months, done. How cool is that?
Sounds very cool.
And just to add, this is not only website. We did 2 developers. We did website, backend. Backend does conversion, connect to Oracle database, SQL database, interaction between those 2 databases, conversion Word documents. It's one of the biggest UI for SQL. So it's all like big program.
It's essentially a product. It's a system.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
Fantastic.
I think we've done good for for 2 guys.
All right, guys, we'll catch you later.
All right.
Thanks for being a guest.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.
Nice to meet you guys. Have a good night.
See you Monday.
All right. Good night.
Am I still working?
Time